Can I have a roll call vote on the motion on the floor?
Mr. Smiley,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
No.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
No.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, with that, I think we should take a 10-minute break. And we'll resume the meeting at 10 to 8.
What's that mean? Bullshit.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I double checked.
June 16. When did you want that ordinance on the work session agenda?
The emergency one? He wants it on the meeting of the 16th.
Yes, on the regular meeting, but do you want to discuss it at the work session,
Yeah, I think he
right?
said next week.
Next week?
I think so.
We've got a long agenda already for.
was the last road to ever get anything done on it.
Whoa.
I forgot I had the hammer. Okay, let's call this meeting of the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly back to order. The next item up is ordinance for introduction, ordinance number FY 2022-18, writing off delinquent uncollectible personal property taxes. Scott?
Move to advance ordinance number FY 2023-2 to public hearing at the next regular meeting of the Assembly on June 2nd, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Mr. Mayor, if I could correct, if you would allow me, I would like to correct the numbering for that ordinance. It's an ordinance number FY 22-18. Thank you.
2218.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I changed my motion.
Second. Also.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. I don't know. We're gonna deal with this ordinance one way or the other. Staff report, please.
Good evening. So this is as pointed out last time, let me back a second. 2 to 3 years ago, we started seriously looking at our delinquent accounts. The first group of accounts that we tackled were the mobile homes when Jackson Parks disintegrated, and the second group were everything except mobile homes. This is the first time that we have a list of accounts that are uncollectible as a matter of routine. So during the work session, it was asked if this was normal. I don't know that we have a normal for this amount yet, but this will be the first one, so I guess we'll see next year. These accounts, we've tried to collect on them for various reasons. We've determined they're uncollectible. The total base tax that you would be giving up by approving this would be $12,003. The remaining amounts are penalties, interest, and fees. Majority of these are tax accounts from 2018 through 2021, and there is one accounts receivable account on there too. So I'm here if you have any questions.
Questions, Scott, and then, well, Scott Smiley, then Scott Horn.
Are all of these businesses closed?
I believe so. I'd have to really look.
So if they're, yes, they are closed and they are not, I mean, like, we cannot find them. We can't get their PFDs. We can't do anything because these people are either out of town with no address that we can go to find them either.
Or the corporation has dissolved and there's nothing to collect on, or other legal means by which we could collect. We aren't able to do that.
Scott?
Thank you. Two of the companies, be it Mill Bay Auto Repair is the legal description, the owner named Mill Bay Auto LLC. And the second one, the company legal description, Kodiak Russian River Lodge, owner name Woman's Bay Lodge LLC. I assume you can get the names from the state on there. And I think if you file small claims and get it against their credit.
But that's the point of an LLC. It's a limited liability corporation, so it dies with the corporation, is what we were told. It's not like a sole proprietor.
Also, that Women's Bay Lodge LLC owner has passed, and so it is uncollectible. The guy passed away, that was the principal owner.
Part of my problem is it shows 21s here. I thought the owner passed away in 20.
But we did not get, so the state doesn't have to notify us, or the people don't have to notify us when somebody passes away. We don't get a death certificate on everybody. So if we didn't get that death certificate, we continue to bill, we continue to see that they're listed. So let's say I, as the granddaughter, continue to run the lodge. I'm not responsible for the taxes, and when this property sold and is now that church, the taxes weren't collected because Walco says personal property is not something that they're going to look at. So there is nobody in Woman's Bay Lodge LLC that we can collect from because that principal owner of Woman's Bay Lodge LLC is no longer alive. And we don't know that. We can't just take it off the roll without having a reason to. So without that death certificate, we left it on. We saw that they were still working it, so, you know,
Okay, I guess my next question would be, did any of these companies receive any COVID money from the borough or the city?
I have no idea about the city.
Well, I'm assuming that that can be found out. I'd like to know
Okay.
on there, especially, it's irritating. There's a lot of people that go to a lot of trouble to pay their taxes, and then to find that this is one way that's an easy out, I find very irritating. Thank you.
Any other comments? James, and then Amy.
Sorry to steal your thunder, Amy. I think I've stated it before when this came up. I'm glad that we're doing things like this, we're cleaning up the books, but I also hate it at the same time. The reason why I hate it is, we can't go after a number of these people or entities, I should say. The people we could, if they were still around, if we spent a little money to track them down, we'd probably come out in the negative if we did that. The issue that I have is the ones that are 3 years out, not the ones that are a single year, not the ones that are 2 years, the ones that are 3 years out. We should have put a lien against the company so that when they sold, or, I mean, they probably closed up, but in the case of Mill Bay Auto, it sold. So during that sell, if it had a lien against it, we could have recouped some of that money through the lien. But again, this one was only a single year, so it's not like we would have recouped it after the fact, which is what happened with a couple of others that we've written off in the past. It's frustrating. I know it's frustrating for staff to listen to us banter about it. I know it's frustrating for them to not be able to recoup the funds, same as it is for us. We just get to talk about it in public. So I'll stop there, but just frustration. I'm gonna vote yes on it, but I just wanted to mention that it's extremely frustrating, and I know it's frustrating for you guys.
Amy? Oh,
Can I just interject a second? I will say that during this cleanup process, we do annually now go to small claims court against property owners. Maybe not all of them. We do try to be judicious about the ones that we do, but that's an annual event now for us, like the foreclosure process. It's the same time. That's why you're gonna see this annually as part of the Keeping Things Clean.
Awesome.
Amy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just gonna, I'm not probably allowed to say who, but there's one person on the list that I know got COVID money from the city or the borough. But I fully agree with the assessment that it is no longer obtainable from that entity. So from what I know, which is a lot on that subject, that's not a route we really have to follow, staff.
Thank you, Amy.
Any other comments? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Smiley.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, that brings us to ordinance number FY 2022-19, amending the code to change the records management roles and responsibilities. Do I have a motion? Scott?
Move to advance ordinance number FY 2022-19 to a public hearing at the next regular meeting of the Assembly on June 2nd.
Second.
Motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Assembly. The Clerk's Office staff evaluated the current records destruction process and wishes to eliminate steps to increase efficiency. It has been the practice to require Assembly authorization by resolution in order for the Clerk's Office staff to dispose of records. When the Assembly adopts or amends the records retention schedule, it establishes full authority in advance to periodically destroy, transfer, microfilm, or take other authorized actions relative to borough records. Eliminating the resolution process will expedite the destruction of records and will provide flexibility for the Clerk's Office staff to destroy records at any time of the year. This change will still keep the Assembly informed since the proposed code amendment requires the Clerk's Office to provide a report of the records that are to be destroyed and report any obsolete records that are destroyed during the preceding year. This ordinance also clarifies the role of the attorney and the department directors in the process. This also addresses records that are found to have administrative value and are requested to be retained beyond the retention period. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions from the Assembly? Joe?
I don't have a question, but I, many years ago, worked at HUD, and I had to do some records retention. I inventoried, labeled, and packaged these boxes, some like 300 boxes that we sent from Anchorage to Seattle. I like your idea better.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of this, so that's all I had.
Any other comments? James?
So just a correction, line 71. So 70 and 71, if you will, it says, "and he preparation." That's probably "the." And I don't know if it's a mess up on the printout or if it's just a typo, but we should probably fix that.
Thank you. We will correct that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call vote on the motion, please.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Mr. Delgado?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
That brings us to ordinance number FY 2022-20, amending Title III Revenue and Finance, Chapter 3.30, Contract, Purchase, Sale, and Transfer Procedures, Section 3.30.030, Open Market Procedures. Scott?
Move to advance ordinance number FY 2022-20 to a public hearing at the next regular meeting of the Assembly on June 2nd, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is my first official ordinance change, and I went big on line 54 and changed one number. So, going big. Through just general, regular borough business, we identified a gap in how the manager has the ability to apply local preference on her limit of $25,000. The way that the code was set up was that her open market preference to go local was capped at $15,000. So all we're doing is changing that cap from $15,000 to $25,000. And so if you're looking at it, it's line 54. We crossed out the whole number, so I felt better about my change, but it's really just the 1 to a 2, giving her the ability to use local preference all the way up. That's all.
We have any comments from the Assembly? Joe?
I think that sometimes I forget that because of where I sit, I get to see more information than the public does. And when we had this problem with the bedding deal, I knew from the moment I heard it that this was going to be fixed because of the staff that we have and the assembly that we have sitting here. So I'm sorry that it had to come by this way, but I'm confident that the staff and the people that we have running this place are forward-thinking enough to fix these problems quickly, and I'm very happy that this is happening so quickly. Thank you.
Any other comments? James?
Forgive my ignorance on this, but why wouldn't we change all of the 15,000s in here to 25s?
Good point.
Line 21, line 26.
Yeah.
So line, may I
Line
answer?
48, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Amy, go ahead.
So line 21 is just quoting what the code is right now. Line 21 and line 26 is telling you how the code reads right now. And then the change is to raise it. So that's just referencing in the code. It's only in the code in that one portion, but it would allow those purchases to go from the local amount from it's actually written from 500 to 15,000 now, and this would bring it from 500 to 25,000. And this has been reviewed by the lawyer, if that makes anyone feel better. Scott has a question.
You happy with that, James?
Only a little.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not happy with it.
Scott, go ahead.
I'm not happy with it. Basically, you need to get rid of all the 15,000 because that's what the old code was. And you're taking it to 25. So line 21 needs to change. Line 26 needs to change. And line 48 needs to, basically, you go through and delete it. You know, it says in value in excess of 25,000. You get rid of that from 15 to 25. So it needs a little bit of a cleanup on it. I don't have a problem with moving it forward with the understanding that it'll be cleaned up because it is incorrect. So Amy, you just need to scratch a little bit more out of there.
We'll be discussing this under.
At the work session.
At the work session under our packet review. But in the meantime, we can move it forward, as Scott says, because it is something that needs to be done. Any other comments? Roll call vote on the motion, please.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Smiley.
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
That brings us to ordinance for introduction number FY 2023-01, and that's receiving the certified real and personal property tax roll and levying an ad valorem tax. Motion, Scott.
Move to advance ordinance number FY 2023-1 to a public hearing at the next regular meeting of the Assembly on June 2nd, 2022.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Good evening. So the assessor certified values last week, and with that, plugging that number into the manager's budget, it changed the mill rate. You can think of the mill rate and the certified values as a teeter-totter. When one goes up, the other goes down. Our assessed values went up. Therefore, on the certification, the mill rate for the manager's budget went down to 10.64. So as a, hopefully, fertilizer for your spring, Mr. Smiley, I gave you a page with a couple of options on it. So, understanding that the borough wanted, the assembly wants, if they want to keep it at 10.75 mill rate, there's 0.11 mills that we could include and change the budget for. So option A would be to add that 0.11 mil to debt service. That would give you $166,800 more in debt service if you were hesitant about receiving 100% reimbursement from the state. That would give us maybe a quarter of a bond payment to make, $166,000. And the illustration here is basically, well, so option 2 would be to add that to the facility fund for repair and maintenance of the buildings. So what option A and B tries to illustrate here, what I tried to get across is if you change any of the items in the limited, the MAPTR calculations, you have to do a plus and minus in order to keep that cap, because we want the MAPTR limit there in the middle, the 14,226,109 is the number we want to keep. So again, with the teeter-totter example, when you subtract from one, you have to add to the other. So just like I said, fertilizer for the next 2 meetings for your budget discussions. And just a quick illustration below for what the change would do to a house with a taxable value of $250,000. It would be a taxable difference to the taxpayer of $27.50 at keeping the mill rate at 10.75 versus 10.64. So anybody have any questions? And if you have any other options you want or you're thinking about, please call me. I'd be happy to discuss it, work it out, find a presentation that you like or want to discuss in the next couple of meetings.
So everybody got that? Roxanne, go ahead.
I would really appreciate it if ideas did go through Dora, because I know it's so tempting and tantalizing to think about different ways to spend that difference, but we want to make sure that it's approvable and that we're definitely working within our cap and the things that we need to do for the budget, so that consideration would be really appreciated.
Okay, assembly comments. James, is that your hand up? Yes.
Yes. The 9.38, which is what we get between the 7.88 for school district and facilities maintenance, plus the 0.94, whoops, gives us a 10.32, correct?
I don't have,
Okay.
sure.
So then
Sounds
you
good.
add 1.37
Oh, is that wrong?
to that, so 9.38 plus 0.94 plus 1.37 gives you 11.69.
Darn.
And on the other calculation, just so that,
I'm going to
I'm-
fire my proofers.
okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not reading it wrong. If I'm reading it correctly, then,
No, I can go back and look at it,
so
certainly.
it's 11.59 on the option B. So we just have to correct,
Yeah,
the one that we have to correct is the debt service mill rate number on this page, just so that we have, because everything else lines up correctly. from what-
I'll rework this and get it back. Like I said, after, first thing I'll fire my
Okay.
proofers.
We're still
Okay.
fertilizing too.
Right? But you get the idea of,
I get the whole
Okay,
concept.
okay.
It's perfectly clear. I really appreciate this. I hope it helps the rest of the assembly. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't looking at it weird and going,
no, probably not. Yeah,
okay, perfect.
sorry about that.
advance this motion to public, we'll advance this motion to public hearing if we vote yes. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Smiley,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion carries 7-0.
That brings us to ordinance for introduction, ordinance number FY 2023-02, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023 and appropriating from all borough funds. Scott?
Move to advance ordinance number FY 2023-02 to public hearing at the next regular meeting of the Assembly on June 2nd, 2022.
Second.
Motion and a second. Staff report.
Just one thing that I would like to say is I really appreciate all of you that are giving me the support regarding the manager's budget, but I really want to thank Dora. This was a masterpiece of her calculating and her work with her team, and also thank all of the departments, because this was very steadfast work that they did to come together to develop this proposal and this budget, and I thank you for your consideration of it.
Any other staff report? No. Okay. Assembly members' comments? Okay, then go ahead, James.
We're going to have more discussion in the next work session, so I don't think there's a necessity to discuss more tonight.
I agree with you 100%. So with that, then we'll take a vote to advance it. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Smiley,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, that brings us to other items. And we're declaring the seat held by Mr. Andrew Kennison vacant on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And hopefully we're advertising and gathering names for replacement. And then we have a hearing tonight on good cause determination for senior citizens.
Bill, we need to act on this, the resignation.
Oh, we have to accept it. You're right. I apologize. No, Scott, we're not going to accept it. Tell that guy he's not leaving town. Make a motion, please.
Thank you. Move to accept with regret the resignation of Mr. Andrew Kennison and direct the Borough Clerk to advertise the vacancy per Borough Code.
Second.
Motion and a second. And any comments before Joe?
Yes, I'm glad that we had Mr. Kennison here with us. It's sad to see him leave. He's been on the planning and zoning for some time now, but in addition, he also worked for the ERAP program for housing. So he did a lot of good for a lot of people in this borough, and I want to thank him for that service, and it's with regret that he leaves.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Smiley,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Mr. Delgado.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
So under other items, it then brings us to a good cause determination for senior citizen exemptions and disabled veteran exemptions on multiple properties. So I would like to recess the regular meeting and convene a judiciary hearing for good cause determination for senior citizen exemption. We'll be hearing 4 cases. I think we'll start with Mr. Weston Fields. What?
The only appellant here is Mr. Mark Olson.
So let's start with Mr. Mark Olson then. And let me just give you a brief rundown on how we run this. The appellant will get 3 minutes to present their case why they should get the exemption. The assessor will have 3 minutes to say why she denied it. The appellant will have 2 minutes of rebuttal. They can ask the assessor questions, and they can abut anything that the assessor has presented, but not present other new evidence. And then the assessor may also have 2 minutes of rebuttal. So with that, we will start with Mr. Olson.
I need to administer the oath, Bill.
Yes, we need to administer the oath.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Mr. Olson, if you'll raise your right hand and get sworn in by the clerk.
Raise your right
This-
hand, please, and do you solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
The truth is all I know, yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Proceed?
Yes.
Okay, I'm here tonight due to this issue here that I am kind of wondering, wow, you know, it's taken the whole assembly and myself, my family, and I to respond to an issue that's, golly, makes me wonder, wow. First, I guess I ask, you know, senior citizens, how many senior citizens do we have here tonight? Because there is certainly a reason why we have these exemptions, why they call them senior citizens. And I would like to start out by saying one of the first things is when you become a senior citizen, I guess the second thing to go is your memory. You know, I can't remember the first. But it's also known as CRS. Can't remember stuff. It's very common with our senior citizen group. I am fortunate, I realize that. I'm not laid up depending on somebody else to keep me alive. And I am here trying to help the community to my last days, as I have in my 71 years here in Kodiak. My wife, she is here helping all the elders too to be able to understand all the government regs so that they can get their health and benefits that they deserve. But yet, there's no other way that, you know, I don't know, I hope you read my letter and the responses as to why we feel we have a good reason. I mean, I am also a native here, and we have this disease that we call lack-a-loot. And when you become a senior citizen and have to live on a certain amount of income, it changes your whole life. And I am hoping that I can be here to speak for the other elders that they don't have computers and they wouldn't know how to plug them in if they did have them. So tonight, I hope you have read my personal reasons, but more than that, tonight I have to come here and spend all this time preparing as like I have nothing else going on. But I'm here tomorrow. My whole family's in town because we have a celebration of life for our nephew. And the following day is a celebration of a wedding. So you see, in a small community and a big family, there's lots of other things that can come up. Especially being a senior citizen, I hope that you will understand, yes, there is things that happen to seniors in the aging process that we can't control. Thank you.
Thank you. Seema?
Mr. Olson provided documentation stating that due to illness and unforeseen circumstances, he suffered extensive hardship. While family emergency or an event that substantially impaired the applicant's ability to timely file is a provision of good cause as defined in KIBC 3.35030D2, the Assembly needs to use caution on how this provision can be used. Mr. Olson states in his documentation that they were ill in October 2021, but not hospitalized, and after recovering, quickly left Alaska for a vacation in November, and upon his return in December 1st, played catch-up with the mail. Additionally, only his wife traveled out of town for Christmas. If Mr. Olson had read his mail, he would have seen that he had until January 18th to timely file for 2022. In his statement, he said he saw the application on January 17. In total, Mr. Olson had 48 out of the 64 allotted days to submit his application. Event number 2 in Mr. Olson's appeal began 10 years ago. If the Assembly grants this as a part of the good cause definition, it would not only open up Mr. Olson but other taxpayers to include long-term instances such as that to be included in good cause. While we are not trying to minimize the heartache the Olson family has over this event, it is the assessor's opinion that the good cause definition does not allow for a hardship that has been occurring over multiple years as a qualification. The applicant's event in this case has been ongoing and occurring in a similar fashion for at least 10 years.
Mr. Olson, do you wish to take 2 minutes of rebuttal, or?
Yes, thank you. You know, it does kind of really disturb me that 2 days late, even with the federal government has given us extensions because of the COVID, and I couldn't even get in the door to talk to anybody. You couldn't get past the desk to even explain of what's happening. I'm starting to lose my train of thought because of being upset that I'm being denied because I'm 2 days late, but yet when I file my response, it takes over 2 months for me to get a response on the issue. And now this is the third part of it that is taken. So, I mean, if a measly few dollars means that much to the community, well then I guess we can stop what we are doing to help the community and look after our own selves. So I'd really appreciate if you would really take in consideration, if you've not ever been a senior citizen, and many of the people are denied that privilege, I hope you understand why this was even written for the senior citizens. So I hope you take this all in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Seema, any follow-up?
By Mr. Olson's own admission, he did not show good cause as defined in 3.35030D2 by his advertence or oversight to read his mail. Therefore, I would ask the Assembly to close the appeal and uphold the assessor's decision to deny the exemption as good cause was not shown.
Okay, we'll close the testimony part, and we'll turn it over to debate among the Assembly. Anyone wish to address this? Jared?
Do we make the motion first and then discuss?
Yes, you go ahead and make the motion one way or the other.
I'll move that the senior citizen exemption be granted for showing good cause as stated in KIBC 3.35.2003D and direct the assessor to accept the application as timely filed for Mr. Mark Olson for the property located at 1111 Kirkhoff Street.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Would you like to address your motion, Jared?
I'm sorry, but this is just ridiculous. This quasi judicial farce that we are going through is just to ask our neighbors to come up here and to talk about some of the hardest things that they've had to experience for the past couple of years because they missed a deadline. I'm going to be voting in favor of all of these to approve all of these applications anyway, because I just oppose this process in general. So,
Any other comments? James?
Trying to formulate my thoughts here. I do understand being late on certain things. I do understand being on time for important issues. I find that over the past 10 years, being late half the time and now late again does not excuse the fact of being late. There are multiple statements in here that state that they were in town and could have done this. There were issues, there were extenuating circumstances. I do see that. I do see that there was anguish going on with their life. I do understand that. We all have that. Do I think that this is a farce? No, I don't think so. I think that this is what we're elected to do. I think that this is what we're supposed to be doing. Unfortunately, some people get caught in the rears, and that's our job to make sure that we have oversight so that one person is not making other lives miserable. And that's why we're here, is to make sure that that oversight is being done. I do not see that SEMA is incorrect in this particular instance.
Any other comments from the assembly? Joe?
I agree with Mr. Turner's assessment that but I think out of the 20 or so applications that came back or that were sent out, or notices that were sent out, 4 of them were returned. I think that shows that at least 4 of the respondents had enough concern that they felt it was worth their time and effort to come over here to do this with us. I'm not generally in favor of forgiving debts, but there are times that it should happen. And in this case, I think, as the other assembly member said, I probably will be voting in favor of taking out all of the 4 debts that we have in front of us. But I think that's appropriate, at least to me, that we rule in his favor.
Any other comments? Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find myself tonight being pulled between what my heart says and what I can clearly see as a need versus what the code says and what we should do. And I appreciate you guys coming in and sharing your story with us. And I feel like I know more about you than I should now or normally would. And thank you for that. I guess I'll side with the assessor because I think she's following the code, and I often find myself thinking that, and I've never seen her not follow the code, so that's an easy decision for me to make. But what I would like to suggest is that if this isn't working for our community, if this isn't the way we want to treat our seniors, that there's things that we can do to change the code in the future. I don't think we should change the code on a case-by-case basis unless we can find a clear and good cause. But if that's not what we want to do in the future, if we want a senior exemption to follow something else, then we do that in the future and we look at changing the code in the future. I don't think it's fair to anyone who did follow the procedures and do it the right way and made the deadlines. And the deadlines are there so we can certify that. I mean, the deadlines are there because we have a process to follow for the budget. And so I want to be cognizant of why we are doing things and why they are deadlines, but also, let's have the discussion at a future work session perhaps about how we can do it differently, if there is a way. I know different communities handle senior exceptions and veterans exceptions in different ways, and we can look at that. But for this, I think following the code is the way to go, and I'm always going to think that.
Any other comments from the assembly? Scott?
I agree with what Amy's saying. It does pull at the heart. I know 3 of the 4 applicants here before us tonight, 4 cases. And I feel for it, and then it comes down to then looking at the code. You know, this went to court, and we were told that the assembly is the only body that can review these. That's why we do this. And when you look at what the requirements are, then this case doesn't meet it. I also know another 6 people that have CRS just like me. I am a senior, and they forgot. And you don't see them here tonight because a couple of them asked me personally, what did I think? Was it, I go, no. So I got to look at everyone. It's not, and so with the information here, there was the opportunity to file. And so I have to go with the code also. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'll add my 2 cents when you talk about changing, and you talk about this being a farce. It was mandated by the courts after we were sued. But what brought it all about was a past assembly decided we were losing too much money to senior exemptions, and so they wanted to make it harder on the seniors because it was at that time the assessor who, for the year that we're talking about, could make a final determination based on any reason, including I'm a senior, I don't have good brain power. I know because I was that assessor. We do have to, if we look at this and realize that there are a lot of cases out there that probably the assessor could handle herself without going through this, we need to change what the wording on that code back to what it was. And we can hear the cases that the assessor can adjudicate. That's my personal opinion. But right now, we do have a code. And once you start giving exceptions to the code, you got to be really careful. So with that, no other comments? We will have a roll call vote. The motion on the floor is to direct the assessor to grant the exemption.
Mr. Smiley,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mr. Turner,
No.
Ms. Williams,
No.
Mr. Arndt,
No.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion fails. 5 noes, 2 yes.
So we will move on, and we'll move to,
Mr. Mayor, if you would please read the bottom part of that page.
according to Appellate Rule 602, the appellant or the assessor has the right of appeal to the Superior Court of the State of Alaska from our final decision. Should you wish to exercise your right of appeal, you must do so by notifying the borough attorney and initiating the process within 30 days from the date of our written decision. Failure to do so will forever bar you from any appeal of this decision. With that, we will move on, and the next appeal is for Weston Fields, who is not present. You have his application and his reasonings before you. So since he's not here to give testimony, we'll go right to the assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fields provided ample and adequate documentation to prove good cause as defined in KIBC 3.35030D. I would ask the Assembly to close this appeal and vote to approve Mr. Fields' exemption for showing good cause.
Let's have a motion on the floor.
Say that last part, Seema, there's a bunch of noise up here.
I would ask the assembly to close this appeal and vote to approve Mr. Fields' exemption for showing good cause.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion? Scott?
Move that the senior citizen exemption be granted for showing good cause as stated in Kodiak Island Borough Code 3.35.030D, and direct the assessor to accept the application as timely filed for Mr. Weston Fields for the property located at 425 Mill Bay Road.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Mr. Delgado,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Smiley.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. I'm not going to read that final thing because I don't think it's necessary. That brings us,
I think you should.
I have to.
Yep.
You're required.
I'm sorry.
The assessor may appeal.
And you know I can't adjourn a meeting without it having a motion? Did you guys know that?
That's right.
You let me
That's
get
right.
away with it for a while. All right, according to Appellate Rule 602, the appellant or the assessor has the right of appeal to the Superior Court of the State of Alaska from our final decision. Should you wish to exercise your right of appeal, you must do so by notifying the borough attorney and initiating the process within 30 days from the date of our written decision. Failure to do so will forever bar you from any appeal of this decision. With that, we'll move on to Constance Olston. She's not here, I believe. So you have her letter and explanation, and we'll turn it over to Seema.
Ms. Olson provided documentation stating her husband passed and she was laden with extensive hardship. The application has been in Ms. Olson's name since 2013, and Mr. Olson passed in 2015. While death of a family member is a provision of good cause as defined in KIBC 3.35030D2, the Assembly needs to use caution on how far back that provision can be used. Ms. Olson states in her documentation, and I quote, "I did not purposely not fill out the paperwork. In fact, I filled it out in November," end quote. If you look at the application, which was received by the KIB Assessor's Office on February 10th, 2022, she signed the application on November 28th, 2021, which proves that she did receive the application in time, signed it, but then held it for 51 days, which resulted in being returned 24 days after the deadline. The good cause definition in KIBC 3.35030D2 clearly states, good cause shall not mean late filing due to the applicant's inadvertence, oversight, or lack of knowledge regarding the filing requirements or deadline. Since no additional evidence has been provided to the Assessor's Office or the Assembly tonight, I would ask that the Assembly close this appeal and vote to uphold the Assessor's decision to deny the exemption as good cause was not shown. Thank you.
Do I have a motion? Scott?
Move to uphold the assessor's decision for lack of good cause shown as stated in Kodiak Island Borough Code 3.35.030D for Miss Constance Olson for the property located at 1211 West Kuskoff Street.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Mr. Delgado,
No.
Mr. Griffin,
No.
Mr. Smiley,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes, 5 yes, 2 noes.
Okay, according to Appellate Rule 602, the appellant or the assessor has the right to appeal to the Superior Court of the State of Alaska from our final decision. Should you wish to exercise your right of appeal, you must do so by notifying the borough attorney and initiating the process within 30 days from the date of our written decision. Failure to do so will forever bar you from any appeal of this decision. And that brings us to our last case tonight, which is Lucy Squartzoff. Do I have a motion?
You need to present the case first. The assessor needs to.
On the fourth one, can't I do it different?
No.
Go ahead. Since she's not here to speak, go ahead.
After reviewing the letter, Ms. Squartzoff provided ample and adequate documentation to prove good cause as defined in KIBC 3.35030D. I would ask the Assembly to close this appeal and vote to approve Ms. Squartzoff's exemption for showing good cause.
Do I have a motion now? Joe?
Move that the senior citizen exemption be granted for showing good cause as stated in KIBC 3.35.030D and direct the assessor to accept the application as timely filed for, oh no, I got the wrong one, for Ms. Lucy Squartzoff. For the property located at NHN Uzinki.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Hold it.
Okay. Scott?
I don't understand why this is good cause. She was back in town in November, and the deadline is January, so where's the good cause, I guess?
The good cause is actually the death of a family member in November.
Okay.
So the January 2021 does not count, but the November 2021 does count, because it was in the period of filing. And I mean, I reviewed it pretty heavily over the last couple of days, so
I understand, I just wondered. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions from the Assembly? Joe?
I don't have a question, but I know the family and the circumstances she was going through with the loss of her husband, her son, and her daughter, all in a row. I lost my daughter 19 years ago. I still can't think straight sometimes, so that's all I have to say.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Mr. Delgado?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Motion passes 7-0.
According to Appellate Rule 602, the appellant or the assessor has the right of appeal to the Superior Court of the State of Alaska from our, final decision. Should you wish to exercise your right of appeal, you must do so by notifying the borough attorney and initiating the process within 30 days from the date of our written decision. Failure to do so will forever bar you from any appeal of this decision. With that, I'm going to close the hearing. Oh, go ahead, make one last comment.
So I just want you to know that this is not something I enjoy doing either, that my job is to make sure that all of the appellants are done by code, and it hurts my heart every time I have to say no also. We had 685 people apply this year, and 26 that didn't apply on time. So it is not with a heavy heart that I ask you guys to uphold my decision. And I just think that part of my job is to show you guys that we have to go by code. We have a deadline. There's a deadline in place for a reason, and that code provides us that deadline. And I appreciate that you guys take my motions into consideration in my decisions. Thank you.
Bill?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what Steven's saying. I feel the same way up here. It's with a heavy heart that you have to say no sometimes. Problem is, we have personal property forms that have to be in on time, or there's consequences, and there's a cost to that. We have property tax payments that have to be received by a certain time, or there's a 10% penalty and interest on top of that. So it isn't just the senior exemption process, it's the whole process, you know. And we've also heard that from some residents that feel there should be no deadline on when you pay your taxes, no penalty whatsoever. You pay it a day late, you can pay it 90 days late and pay it 2 years late. Should be none. The process is, you know, and it isn't fun. You know, we heard problems, and I wanted to change things on. It was due to the postmark that people got charged the penalty on their property tax, because it doesn't get postmarked until it goes to Anchorage before it comes back to Kodiak on there. And I've had that problem on other issues where it costs me too. And so now, whenever it's a check, I take it up to the counter and they hand stamp it with the date. So, you know, it's with a heavy heart that I had to say no on 2 of these. Thank you.
Any other comments before we close the judiciary hearing here? Seeing none, we will close the hearing. We will reconvene the regular meeting, and we are open for citizens' comments. If you're calling in, it's 907-486-3231, toll-free 1-855-492-9202. If you're here, please step to the podium, turn the mic on, and sign in. State your name for the record. If you're calling in, state your name for the record, and please turn off your listening device or turn it down so we don't get feedback. And in all cases, please be civil. Thank you.
Do I need to sign this again?
No.
Okay. I was listening again to the Homer radio station. Sadly, we don't seem to have a radio station in Kodiak that has kind of a conservative voice, and I hope eventually that will change. It was talking this morning using the podcaster that speaks on a number of college campuses, Charlie Kirk, who said that time was running out for actually our United States sovereignty because of the World Health Organization and the Biden administration, who is, the latter is submitting amendments to be voted on in Geneva very soon. If these amendments are passed, it would give over our nation's sovereignty regarding health issues to the World Health Organization. I thought that sounds too bizarre to be real, and I always like to try to vet things, so I did call Senator Dan Sullivan, and they are aware of that. And I just wanted to say, when I was a Boise resident in 1966, I remember going to our Baptist church, and the pastor showed us a film which proved beyond a doubt that the World Health Organization, even way back then, had strong communist ties. So I wasn't surprised to hear repeatedly online and radio that the World Health Organization still seems to have those ties. I'm just, like I think thousands and thousands of people right now are wondering what the future holds. If the WHO starts making emergency declarations, are they going to make them indefinitely? I just hope that one commentator was right that said the states could have in their constitution something that protects them from draconian measures that we've all had our fill of the last 2 years, and it hasn't really proven that those draconian measures worked. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any call-ins? Okay. With that, we'll move on to assembly member comments. I don't remember where I started, so I think I'll start with Amy.
Thank you. It's nice to have the full assembly up here, and for what it's worth, these new chairs are good. Except James wants his old chair back, but the rest of us are happy. Thank you for making that change out. Just one quick thing. I felt bad missing last week's meeting, but I was at Bayside, and I want to just kind of, I mean, the mayor already thanked the community. I saw things that I didn't know a community could do. Bayside Fire Department, wow. The new chief and their volunteer fire staff were just outstanding, and that place got transformed into a search center that was just amazing. And the amount of businesses that came out and volunteers that came out and the show of support that this community gave was really something. And sorry I missed the discussion last week, but my heart was there. And even if I would have been sitting there, I still would have been there. So I figured I should just stay. Luckily, a superintendent came to the meeting last week and was able to download me afterwards. But just thanks to the community, and it was a really great show of support. And if anyone was ever doubting, I've heard a lot of people say, I was thinking about moving. But that event alone, I think, will keep people here. It was an amazing show. So thanks to everyone who came out.
Thank you, Amy. Jeff?
I guess I would just comment on Assembly Member Williams' comment and just say that that's what makes Kodiak an amazing place, and that's what keeps me and my family here and will continue to keep us here. And my heart still goes out to Sawyer's family, and will continue to be with thinking of them. Thank you.
Scott Smiley?
Nothing from me.
Scott Ornt?
I basically concur with what's been mentioned and no further comment.
Jared?
Nope, nothing from me.
Joe?
Yes, I'd like to say I enjoyed our meeting when we had the service district people here. That was very good. I enjoyed having them here and listening to them talk. It makes me understand their ask a little bit more when you can question them. So that was great. One of them mentioned, when I talked about dust suppression with the salt water, he said that he was hoping I would talk about granite. It's springtime here, and every time it becomes spring, you can see, as you drive down any of these roads, the dust in the air from the gravel that they put down in the wintertime. What I found out with granite is that when it's in sand or road grade materials, it's 98% dust free. Once you get it shaped and formed onto the road and done correctly, it can last up to 6 months without maintenance. So I know there's a granite quarry close to Kodiak, and I'm wondering if there are any contractors or any places like even the borough or the city that might be interested in getting some of that out of there. I've been working for the last 10 years to try to get that quarry open to Kodiak area. So if we have interest expressed, I think that there just has to be the right kind of you know, you can tempt these people in the right ways. There are 2 ANCs that you have to work with to get it done. So I think there are ways to get them to open that up, and hopefully, I'm looking forward to hearing from more people. When you drive down the roads, you see the ruts in the asphalt. If we can put granite in there, I bet you it says that the asphalt won't have to be changed yearly, but that's all I had for tonight. Thank you.
James?
Let's see. First of all, there was a comment made tonight about the radio stations here in Kodiak. I think that the radio stations in Kodiak do a great job. If we wanted a more conservative radio, then somebody's going to have to take volunteer time on the radio station that we have. People get to speak their mind when they are a DJ, and that is their right when they're a DJ. So if you want to have volunteer time on one of the radio stations, I'm sure they would be happy to have you take up some of their airspace, as they're always looking for somebody. Number two, again, I'll say it again, it pains me to vote no tonight on the budget for the school district. I don't know what's going to happen with the governor. I really had some flavored words for him in my statement. I chose not to do that. I would like to ask some of the other assembly members to do the same when they're making comments about the assembly and the process that we have. We are an elected body. We're supposed to be doing certain things. We have a relatively tough job. We have to make tough decisions. It is our job to do that. Making light of that, or making it seem like we're ogreish or what have you, maybe. It kind of disturbs me a little bit. The other piece is when somebody has made comments about a particular assembly person's, not necessarily anybody in particular, I should say, but somebody makes a statement and another person on the assembly is judgmental of that person. Judge the issue at hand, don't judge that person. It's not right. Please stop doing that. We are adults here. Let's not make others on this assembly feel belittled by what they do day in and day out for this assembly, for this community. I'm just appalled tonight at what I've heard this evening. That's all I've got.
Okay, there's a couple of announcements I have to make, and one thing I will say, Joe, the rock on this island is called gray wacky, and it's soft. That's why we have so many problems with roads. There will be a special meeting of the Assembly next Thursday, May 26, 2022, at 6:30 p.m. in the Borough Assembly Chambers, which will be followed by the Assembly work session. The next regular meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 at 6:30 in the Borough Assembly Chambers. Also, the borough offices will be closed on Monday, May 30th in observance of Memorial Day.
Move to adjourn.
What? These papers? Yeah, and also the papers that you have need to be returned.
Yeah. Just leave them up here.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Let's go home.